Breaking tonight, the nation was hit by a terrorist attack less than 7 days ago. For 5 days, the country and its press focused on the killers, trying to get to the bottom of who they were, how deeply connected to terror they had become, and who, if anyone, helped finance, plan, or support their operation. On the 6th day, Donald Trump decided he'd like to get back into the media headlines. Welcome to the Kelly File, everyone. I'm Megyn Kelly. President Obama came out on Sunday, 2 days after the FBI confirmed this was a terrorist attack, to, quote, reassure us. What we received was a statement that his strategy will not change, that some visa programs will be reviewed, gun laws that wouldn't have prevented this attack nevertheless need to be tightened, and reminding us to reject any instinct to treat Muslims differently or to fearmonger about Islam. In response to which most Republicans replied, "No one's doing that, Mr. President." Enter Donald Trump.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on. You have no choice.
And now, less than a week after the worst terror attack on America since 9/11, we are in a full-blown media circus. Not about these two killers and their terror ties, but about something a man who is not the president said he would do if by chance his party nominates him to be president, and then the same general electorate that elected Barack Obama twice happens to choose him, Donald Trump, as their president. Trump's remarks have already been labeled hateful, bigoted, racist, and un-American, and that is just from his Republican rivals. They've been condemned by the prime ministers of both Britain and France, I kid you not. They've been condemned by the Senate Majority Leader, by Hillary Clinton, of course, by the White House, which declared that this should be it for Mr. Trump.
The first thing a president does when he or she takes the oath of office is to swear an oath to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. And the fact is that what Donald Trump said yesterday disqualifies him from serving as president.
The Pentagon, yes, the Pentagon saw fit to weigh in.
Without wading into politics, anything that tries to bolster, if you will, the ISIL narrative that the United States is somehow at war with Islam is contrary to our values and contrary to our national security.
Dick Cheney recoiled. Almost the entire GOP presidential field attacked the comments, as did the Speaker of the House in an extraordinary moment earlier today.
Normally, I do not comment on what's going on in the presidential election. I will take an exception today. This is not conservatism. What was proposed yesterday is not what this party stands for. And more importantly, it's not what this country stands for.
But reaction from our leaders and elected officials was nothing compared to the non-stop, incessant drumbeat of media outlets that first booked Donald Trump to appear on their shows, then played those interviews ad nauseum all day long. CNN and MSNBC gave Trump half-hour interviews by phone on their morning shows and then reran the exchanges in their entirety later in the day. It was all Trump all the time across almost all the media. We are talking 18-plus hours of coverage devoted to him in the past 24 hours. And the crowning moment, when ABC News went to no less than Barbara Walters to interview Trump for this evening's World News Tonight broadcast. Yes, Peter Jennings' old post, which featured roughly 10 minutes of Trump coverage before they even got to the issue of terror. You remember terror? The 14 dead and the 21 injured in California? Here's a little of Barbara Walters' interview of Trump, which amazingly ABC News had the nerve to label exclusive.
Do you regret your ban on Muslims, which some people think is un-American?
Not at all. We have to do the right thing. Somebody in this country has to say what's right. I have great respect and love. I have people that I have tremendous relationships with. They're Muslim. And Barbara, they agree with me 100%.
Are you a bigot?
Not at all. Probably the least of anybody you've ever met.
Because?
Because I'm not. I'm a person that has common sense.
Well, we will not be devoting an hour or a half hour or 20 minutes to what Trump said tonight. We will discuss it since it is a big story, and this is the GOP frontrunner. But we are going to discuss terror tonight with Dr. Sebastian Gorka, who was in the FBI, with the FBI in L.A. during this attack, and then with Andy McCarthy, who is here, the former federal prosecutor, who brought to justice the man behind the first Trade Center bombing. He'll tell us what he sees from the evidence unearthed so far about these terror ties. But we begin tonight with Mark Thiessen and Howie Kurtz. Howie, there is no question that remarks like this from the Republican frontrunner are a big story. The media has to cover it. But wow, really?
Well, given the way this has exploded across the political landscape, given the denunciations from within his own party, as you just played, given the resonance here, given that this feels like a tipping point in the campaign, any news organization that wasn't all over it would be guilty of malpractice. But at the same time, as you point out, this is how Trump seizes the media spotlight again and again and again by saying something that seems outlandish, that goes too far, that is over the top. Then he calls into all the shows, a privilege not accorded to other candidates, and they replay it.
It's lather, rinse, repeat. We've seen this many times, Howie, and the media is complicit. I mean, it's one thing if you'd never seen this happen before, but whenever Donald Trump's poll numbers fall, like we saw that Monmouth poll out of Iowa yesterday, which put Ted Cruz in the first position, before the CNN poll came out later in the day, putting Donald Trump back at #1. Ted Cruz, for the first time nationally, is polling in the second position. Whenever they fall, he says something to get himself back on TV. He went 6 days without dominating the airwaves.
Also, the movie that we've seen before is that when all of the establishment press beats up on Trump, as well as the, quote, political establishment, or what remains of it, this helps him with his base, which sees him as a truth teller, which sees him as standing up to the elite. Of course, this isn't going to
do anything to his numbers with his core supporters. Anybody who thinks that hasn't been paying attention.
Right. But the press is in a box here, Megyn, because on the one hand, it is our responsibility to cover what he says, especially something like this, aggressively, and at the same time, not let him hijack the campaign coverage.
8 hours on MSNBC today, 8 hours on CNN today, Mark Thiessen, and you tell me whether that is accidental, whether there's some reason they would prefer to be talking about what Donald Trump has said and whether he represents Republicans versus the terror attack that the president has basically said he's going to do nothing about to change our strategy in fighting this group ISIS.
Oh, no, absolutely. Look, at the White House, they're saying, thank God for Donald Trump. I mean, here we had the worst terrorist attack on our soil since 9/11. We had found a terrorist bomb-making factory in a suburban neighborhood. President Obama was once again caught having underestimated the threat, telling us a day before the attacks that we didn't have to worry about a Paris-style attack here, and being proven wrong. And 68% of the American people, according to a recent poll this week, say that he's not doing enough on the ground militarily to defeat ISIS. This is the most important story. This is our national security in the balance, and we're talking about Donald Trump and something that's never going to happen, banning all Muslims from entering this country.
And it's one thing for Donald Trump to say it, Mark, but you tell me whether the media marches like lemmings when the conductor, you know, he gets the orchestra going, and the media understand their role. They start playing the flute and playing the clarinet and doing exactly what he wants them to do.
No, they absolutely do, because it's a ratings bonanza for them. And also, to the extent that there's a liberal bias in the media, it's good for them to move off of this story. I mean, think about, look, Donald Trump clearly benefits, but who else benefits from this? Barack Obama benefits, because we're not talking about his failed strategy on ISIS. Hillary Clinton benefits, because all the Republicans...
But there's more to it than that, Mark. There's more to it, because now the articles are coming out. There was a piece in the Federalist today, and you're hearing this more and more, that there are many Republicans, and Democrats for that matter, who believe that Donald Trump, if he were to become the nominee, never mind the president, represents a potentially generational, catastrophic event for the Republican Party.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the more they can pump up Trump, the better for the Democrats. I mean, Hillary Clinton benefits from this because it helps Donald Trump, and all of the Republican Party is now having a debate. Instead of debating terrorism, we're having a debate over whether we should have a total and complete ban on all Muslims entering America. That helps them. And by the way, it also helps ISIS, because this is as the Pentagon spokesman you just quoted said, this is a huge propaganda victory for Islamic radicalism. They want to paint us, Americans, as being anti-Muslim, at war with Islam, and this just feeds that narrative. So everybody benefits except the Republican Party and the country.
Howie, is there no responsibility on the part of the media to say, it's a story, sure. I mean, you know, we're leading with the story tonight, and now it is almost 9/11, and we are moving on. But these outlets that do these half-an-hour phoners with him, that they then re-air later, that these shows that devote 30, 45 minutes to covering this one statement and almost nothing to terror.
Sure, we have some responsibility to stay focused on what happened in San Bernardino and the terror story, which has now become the Donald Trump story. Sure, we have some responsibility to have some fairness toward the other candidates who are competing for the nomination. But I will say this, and by the way, it's not just liberal bias. Conservative commentators are among Trump's most vehement critics. At least he allows himself, he puts himself in the journalistic firing line. He allows himself to be interviewed in a way a lot of candidates duck the press or only issue carefully cultivated sound bites. So at least we get a chance to go at him, but of course that feeds into the Trump narrative, which then at times just swallows the whole thing.
All the Republicans make themselves available. Hillary Clinton doesn't make herself quite as available as she should, but it's no trouble getting the GOPers to come on. It's good to see you both.
Good to see you, Megyn.